big time grapplers matching up at UFC 282. We have the forever prospect. You guys know him. It's Erik Silva. No, it's a different Erik Silva. The king, the man from Lux Fighting. He's coming into the UFC off a big win on Dana White's Contender Series, taking on another fellow Contender Series alum in downtown. TJ Brown looking to pick up the pieces after losing his last time out against Saaiman, Nordembeka. And Matt, I want to talk about the guy who's more recently off Contender Series because we don't normally see 35-year-olds coming into the UFC making their debut. And if you watched last weekend's UFC Orlando card, you might have caught the blurb where they were accepting applications for the Ultimate Fighter, and they showed the age range, and the cutoff was 34.
But wait, Craig, how much am I supposed to weigh if I want to apply for the show?
They did not say that, but apparently Bobby Maximus just blew the doors off them at 43 in the last season. But Matt, we talked about Erik Silva a lot on our Dana White's Contender Series show. We're going to give you all of the lowdown on him, update you on the fight he had against Anvar Boynazarov, and then touch down on this matchup here against Downtown TJ Brown. Anvar Boynazarov,
my favorite fight,
Uzbekistan, taking on Erik Silva, the forever prospect. No, but it is another Erik Silva, the king Erik Silva, Lux champion. I look at this matchup, and a lot of people might not know these two fighters. You need to know these two fighters. Now, Lux, I look at them and I go, geez, like, Renato Valdez fought for Lux, and he's in the UFC now, and he got steamrolled by the steamroller Matt Frivola. And we've seen fighters from Lux where I go, geez, I just don't know. And then I watch Erik Silva, and I watch the guys that he's fighting, and I go, wow, this guy really is a can't-miss prospect. But then everything else comes into it. So he is one of the best featherweights in Latin America. He hails from Venezuela, fights out of, a different country, but that's going to happen. You don't necessarily train from the country. You don't necessarily dance with the girl that you brought. So for Erik Silva,
you're getting wild at parodies.
The thing that I do like out of him, I look at him, he's 34 years old, and I go, geez. He's from Venezuela, I go, geez.
Both these guys do have that problem, though, for being honest.
He's at featherweight, he's 5'10". Is he Omar Morales? Omar Morales had to do the exact same thing, come in late in his career on Contender Series, and then push into the UFC.
I think that's a really good point to bring up, but I'll also bring up what a lot of people said after Jeff Neal finished Vicente Luque. And I know hindsight's always 20/20, but still, Luque's like 78 years old in MMA years. He's been in some tough fights. Whereas Jeff Neal, yeah, he's been in some crazy fights, but he takes a lot of time off after. Yeah. He'll fight once in a blue moon. He's been a lot more conscious about really where his health is over time. But I agree with you. Both Anvar and Erik Silva have to look really good in this matchup because this chance to get signed by the UFC is more than likely going to be their last one. But I think this is by far the best fight in the card because for Erik Silva, phenomenal jiu-jitsu, and I know you're going to speak about it, a good striker too. Not somebody who only has to go in there and look for the takedown to be able to have success in their fights. He can get it done on the feet too, but I compare both these fighters to Raoni Barcelos, the guy who I all think we realized how good he was, but it felt like he really caught his stride as an MMA fighter a little bit too late in life. So I think this fight's going to be incredible. I think this is the one that everyone's going to be talking about after. If there's a double signing of any fight, this is probably going to be the one because it was so good going down the stretch, but still.
Or you get a really early finish. I'll make my pick. I'm going to go with Erik Silva, the forever prospect, the Venezuelan. I love the striking, and the thing that I like about him, he keeps his head back, which you don't necessarily love, but I do look at the way that Anvar strikes. He's been low in MMA. He does throw a lot of hooks. He throws the knee up the middle, like the leg kicks out of Silva. He has a great jab, but he's got a laser right hand to close the distance. His takedowns are great from open space and up against the fence, and I think his jiu-jitsu is very, very good. I think it's going to be able to get the win. So, Matt, Erik Silva took on Anvar Boynazarov, noted striker, kickboxer, and man, he beat the brakes off of him. And his right hand was an absolute laser in that one, like we knew. So now he's taking on TJ Brown. And again, I said from the start, this is a matchup between two primary grapplers because for Silva, his takedowns are great. They're lethal. His jiu-jitsu is quick. His back take's great. Like, he is a slick grappler. I almost liken him, and this is a stretch, but to a Jalton Almeida type. That's just how quick he gets into position and how he's able to handle his opponents. Whereas for TJ Brown, he chains his takedowns together. He's grimy. He really is in there from round 1 to round 3. This is an interesting matchup, though, because for Brown, he's had fights that he's won that have been questionable. He's had fights that he's lost that were questionable. And for Erik Silva, we haven't really seen him face resistance in a meaningful amount of time.
And that's the question I kind of wanted to pose to you. For me, I think this fight comes down to pacing and cardio more than anything. Would you agree? Because I think both guys are going to want to get the fight to the mat. Don't get me wrong. I favor Silva on the outside on the feet a little bit more. I like his from point A to point B a little little bit better. He has better footwork with his striking. But the thing about Brown is, like you mentioned, he isn't grimier, and he likes that kind of grit and grind style, if you will. Daniel Cormier made it famous. Now, no, he's not DC, but he wants to get on top of you and make it ugly. He might not always get a submission win, but he's really going to wear on you with his physicality. The thing is, he's a guy who, let's say that is his style for round 1 and round 2, and he's having a lot of success. He himself is going to get tired as that fight goes on, and he can almost outpace himself. And if that is the case, I could see Erik Silva starting to pull away and having success in the second half of the fight. But on the flip side, let's say TJ Brown is having trouble getting those takedowns, and Erik Silva's the one who's going out there getting a lot of those early explosions and having success. Could TJ Brown kind of flip the script and then just kind of become the Darren Elkins, if you will? Get on top of him and become that grindy fighter in the second and the third round? Because I think both these guys' styles do complement each other very well. And it's not often that you can say that both guys can use their cardio as an advantage.
Well, and I mean, we saw that out of TJ Brown. He came into the UFC, fights Jordan Griffin, takes him down 7 times, gets caught in a submission, and that's kind of it for him.
Jordan Griffin, though.
You look at Brown and his overall UFC career. He loses to Danny Chavez. He gets taken down and outstruck. That was kind of weird because Chavez is a striker. He beats Kai Kamaka by split decision. Matt, the judges' scorecards in that fight, Bell and D'Amato, 29-28 Brown. 30-27 Adelaide Bird for Kamaka, 15-0 on MMA decisions, all scored it for Kamaka. He goes out there and beats Charles Rosa handily, takes him down and handles him. And then he loses to Shailan Nordembeka's last time out, gets dropped in that fight. So then I went back and I watched TJ Brown's fights. And I went back and really, frame by frame, we're looking at them. Because he trains at a Westside MMA in Arkansas. Main training partner, Bryce Mitchell, who's on this card, taking on Ilia Topuria. But for TJ Brown, in his fights, Contender Series and UFC, fights Dylan Lockard. Well, I had seen Dylan Lockard fight Jesse Erickson over with NEF before Lockard fought on Contender Series. Lockard drops him with the right cross in the first round. Kamaka drops him with a weird short right hand in the second round. Shailan Nordembeka drops him with a right cross in the first round of their fight. TJ Brown kind of tends to drop this hand and gets hit by right hands, and Erik Silva has a tough right hand.
They said that about Joe Louis, too, and he's the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Wild stuff. Maybe TJ Brown's on the way to a championship. Brown's gritty. Brown gets dropped and doesn't really give up. And the other thing about Brown, you get him down, you get him with his back to the mat, he's not a wrestler in that sense of the word. He can really sweep well off the back. He can really try and change positions around. So Brown is a slimy, slippery kind of guy when he gets to the mat. And Erik Silva is one of those guys that likes to take the back. So I love this fight. The odds in this one, Silva open to -225, -122 right now. Brown open +190, -100. So the odds closing in at par. Matt, we have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprised to us as they are to you. I'm going to say over under 62.5% Silva.
I think it's going to be over.
It's going to be over? Oh my. 733 total votes, 85% Silva, 22% by decision, 67% by submission. Okay. 15% that have TJ Brown, 76% by decision. Matt, the fans have it overwhelmingly for Erik Silva, the second coming. But the odds closing in for TJ Brown. So what do you think here?
I have it ever so slightly for Erik Silva, and I probably would have had a different opinion on this fight if I didn't see TJ Brown just fight Nordembeka, because Nordembeka, to a degree, is like a little bit more... I guess you need to have a more steady foundation than Erik Silva, maybe, but their skills are kind of the same. Like, they're both that outside-inside striker who go for takedowns.
Could you imagine if Erik Silva at 35 changed his body composition to look like Shailan Nordembeka?
I think it'd be impossible.
Oh my.
But that's the thing about Silva. I think he can get some of the same work done from the outside that Nordembeka had success with against TJ Brown. And the thing about Silva is, I don't think his style of grappling is going to tire himself out, which is something you have to worry about when you're fighting a guy like TJ Brown. Silva is going to try to get to that one dominant position and stay there. That doesn't really waste a lot of energy. You're really just fighting for submissions at that point, and that's also very tiring on the person who's defending those submissions as well. So I like Erik Silva ever so slightly in this matchup, but I think this is a difficult fight for him. Like, you might look at both guys' record and think, wow, the guy who's 9-1 is going to run over the guy who's 16-9, but I think this is a very tightly matched fight.
Yeah, it should be a really fun one, and I'm not necessarily down on Silva at all for beating 3-0 Anvar Boynazarov, because that guy was a championship kickboxer the world over, and it was a giant win for Silva. So both of us going with Erik Silva in the matchup. I think it's going to be a really fun one. UFC 282, Blachowicz versus Ankalaev in the main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.